Hello and welcome back to the second part of Mastering Identity Management. My name is Waleed Mehr. I'm a Microsoft technical trainer specializing in Azure infrastructure, security and compliance, security operations, AI and Copilot courses. I'm here to walk through the Microsoft SC-300 Identity and Access Administrator Associate course with you. In the first part of our Identity Management Solution video, we've already covered the essentials: creating and managing users, groups, devices, and understanding licensing. Now we are taking your skills to the next level. In this session, we'll unlock the power of Microsoft Entra Admin Portal, your command center for modern identity management. So get ready to manage company branding and create a seamless experience for your users. Configure custom and built-in roles to delegate responsibilities with precision. Organize resources using admin units for streamlined administration. Add and verify custom domains to expand your organization's reach. Perform bulk user creation and invitation, making onboarding easier. Control tenant-wide settings for robust security and compliance. Fine-tune user-specific settings to give administrators comprehensive control over the identity environment. So let's get started. In this part of the session, we're going to look at company branding. Now, why do we need company branding? Surely when you land onto your portals and sites that you're logging into, it's nice to see some sort of a detail around your company settings visible to you. So you know you're signing into the right page, and you know this is your company portal that you're signing into, and manage your access to resources based on that. Now, how does this look? We'll have a look at that in the portal just in a minute. Just as a quick reminder, for this particular feature, you need to ensure that you have at least a P1 or P2 Entra ID license for you to be able to configure some of these. So let's jump into the portal and have a look at some of these. I'm back into Entra Admin Center, so entra.microsoft.com. And all I'm doing is scrolling down to the blade, or on the blades, looking for company custom branding. Now, once I click on custom branding, I have some options over here that I can go and configure to ensure that I can match this to look and have a feel of my company's details. Now, by default, there are some default settings enabled that you can change and configure. So for now, I am looking at default sign-in page, and I can choose to edit some of that. Now, as part of this session, I am not going to create all or make all the changes that are in the menu, but we'll highlight some of these for you. For example, I can start working with a fav icon that could go in your landing page. Now, typically your fav icon is something that appears up as an icon when you're looking at a browser. So something a bit like that on top of my screen. I'll zoom into that so we can have a quick look. So something like this appearing up on top of your environment. So you know this is an icon or maybe a logo to your company's page. So you could add that. Now, obviously, there are some details that you might need to follow in terms of uploading this image over here and bringing that to your environment. So let me see if I can find an image for this. All right, let's click and find an image. I'll go with a logo picture that I have. It might not look very pretty, but we'll add it as part of the demo just to see how that looks like. Now, while we're doing this, it might be worthwhile looking at what happens when a user currently logs into my environment before we see any of these changes. And for that, I am going to simply log into another page and see how that looks like. Now, very quickly, I am just simply going to open this here and type in portal.azure.com and log in. Now let's bring in a user that we are going to sign in with. So if I type in details for my star user, Adele. Now, as soon as I do that, this is the login page that currently Adele sees. It's centralized. It's got just Microsoft Azure written onto it and a blue screen and nothing else as part of that setup. So hopefully, once we've done the company branding, some of this will change. So let's go add some other details. Let's add some background details. I'll see if I can pick up a background picture. Again, a random image just for now, just to show how that would look like. Changing my color theme. Let's go a little bit more into, we already had blue. Let's try and see if we can go into a bit more like that. And that's pretty much what I'm going to choose from the first menu. Now, apart from that, we go into the layout tab. And currently our login page is full screen and it's centered. What we can do is we can make it go shift to the side. We can keep it in the middle, whatever we prefer. We can add a header. We can add footer to it. We can add other information to it. If you have custom cascading style sheets, you can bring custom CSS sheets to this as well. If you want to make the landing page look more appealing. Under the header, I can go and define what the header looks like. If I had a logo for the header, I can drop that in here. That could have some information about my company name. Under the footer, we can show details around my privacy policies, terms and use policies that I can have. I can add the links to those. For now, I don't have any of those available, but again, it's something if you're looking to add to your landing page, you could add them as part of your setup. Now, under my sign-in page, again, I can add some more details to this, depending on what you want people to be seeing when they're going into your sign-in form and they're registering themselves to be able to power off your setup. So you can add some more details in here. Now, there is a small option over here to look at self-service password reset. That is something that we cover in another course or another video, within this course in another video. However, we'll talk more about on how that would look like when somebody's forgotten their password. They click on forget password, and the details that they can go through will be part of that setup. Finally, I'll click on review and save, and this should now be updated onto my landing page. Once this is completed, we'll have a look at how that looks like on the other page. So let's switch the screen back one more time and refresh and see if we can see some of these changes applied already. Right, I'm back onto the other page where we were trying to log in. Now, if I try to log in back with Adele's account one more time and hit next, now this should kick in place all the settings that we have. Now you can see the background color that we chose, the brown burgundy color, that came up a little bit. The picture that we have is huge, so it's taken over pretty much all of it, the space that we had, but you can just about see a slight shade of that color for the background that we chose earlier on. That's our main picture that we chose. Our sign-in details are on the side of the screen. Again, if you wanted to add header and footer, currently I don't have anything in the header, otherwise that would have appeared on the top of the screen. And for the footer, you can see right at the bottom of the screen that we can see the details right there, just talking about the terms of use and the privacy policies, that if we had a link to them, they would be active and we should be able to click on them and see them. So this is your company branding or custom branding for your Entra. In this part of the session, we are going to discuss a little bit more about what are Entra roles and how do we manage them. So let's get started. Now, so far we have in this series spoken about different portals that we can look at. One of the key portal that we are going to be working with is our Entra Admin Center, which is entra.microsoft.com. Now, apart from that, when we are looking to manage licensing and dealing with other resources for M365, we have to jump into M365 Admin Center, as we did in one of the previous videos when we were looking to assign licenses to individual users or to groups. Apart from that, we can access our resources like Entra using Azure Portal, which will be portal.azure.com. And then there are some other tools in terms of security available for us on our Defender portal. For that, you'll have to go onto security.microsoft.com. However, if you are new to some of this and you find it hard to remember all of these links, my advice to you would be to remember just one key link that's important for you to start off with, and that is admin.microsoft.com. And why is that? Let me take you through to that portal to explain. All right, we're in our admin portal. So this is admin.microsoft.com, M365 Admin Center portal, and we are looking at details that are available for us to work with. In one of the sessions previously, we've spoken about how to assign licensing using this portal, but right now we're looking at some other details. For example, on the left-hand side, right at the bottom of the screen, I'm hovering onto something that says Show All. So I am going to click on the Show All option, and within that, if I scroll further down, it has a list of my admin centers that I can use as part of my job role as being an admin in my environment. Now, if I will click on the button that says All Admin Centers, this is where it shows me a long list of all the admin centers or admin portals that I might need in my job role to manage my resources. Now, some of the portals that I mentioned earlier on are also listed over here. Things like Azure, available for me to go from here. My Entra, available for me to go from here. The Defender portal, that's part of my security, available for me to look from here. And along with that, there are a few others that I can try and go into. If I'm managing different resources, this could become a nice place for me to click on all the admin portals that I have in my environment. Now, for this part of the session, we are going to go back into my Entra portal, and within the Entra portal, we are going to look at managing roles and admin responsibilities. And for the first part we're going to do is in the Entra Admin Center, simply clicking on Roles and Admin from the blade and have a quick look through some of the roles that we have available. Now, Microsoft has predefined or built in the roles, quite a few of them available for me to look at, and there's a long list of them available in here. Now, again, if you're new to some of this, Microsoft provides the Learn documentation that explains each one of these roles on what they are and what privileges they get as being part by you assigning that role to someone. If you're not so sure, you can always come back in the portal here, click on one of the roles that you're interested to know a little bit more about, and under the role you can see, for instance, right now I have just clicked on Application Administrator as a role. Currently, we can look at the assignments on who has this role assigned to themselves, and we can also look at the description. Now, the description is where it defines what someone with this role should be able to do. And if I scroll down, you can see there's a long list of permissions that are assigned within this role to someone if this role was given to them. Now, again, I'm not going to cover all of these permissions in detail. However, something that you can explore in your own time to understand if this matches the need for what you're about to do, or when you're assigning someone a role, does this cover all the areas that they need? Some parts are highlighted with privileged next to them. That tells you that this permission has a little bit more power or more privileged permission that's been assigned within this role. So just be careful that this would become a privileged role in your environments. Now, along with that, if I scroll further down to the bottom of the list somewhere, there is another heading that comes across over here, which is nice to be aware of, that it suggests that it is going to look into assigning some additional permissions to users, which are not necessarily my members. These are external users like guest users, or if I was to assign this to an application service principal, so it would need some additional settings for them to be able to read certain resources. So you can see all of those permissions visible for you under your role description. Now, for me to assign this role to somebody, I can simply go into users and assign the roles to users as an individual scenario. So we can go into, let's pick up Frank. We created Frank in one of the modules as part of this series. So let's go into Frank to assign this role to Frank. Now, under here, under the blade for the user, I can see assigned roles, and I can simply see if there were any roles assigned to Frank. Now, I have an option to start this assignment from right here to say add assignment and see if this is going to be assigned to the user that belongs to Contoso under the entire directory as the resource scope. And I am now defining the role that I need to pick. Maybe I'm giving Frank an application administrator role, and I'm going to assign that in here. So this is something I can choose. Now, again, the scope over here currently is my directory. It could be just for an application or a particular service principal that might be assigning this role to, but for now, I'll leave that out. Now, again, here we have Frank added already because we are in Frank's profile adding this role, and all I need to do is go into assigning this role to Frank. Now, there are some other settings available for us to look at over here, something that we will discuss in a little bit more detail in one of the further modules in this course, talking a little bit more about identity governance, and we'll come back to privileged identity management in terms of explaining some more details around this. Till then, we'll leave this area out for now. However, as simple as assigning role. Now, let me cancel that and come back out, and let's jump back into the roles and admins for one more time. Now, in here, if I go back into my administrator or application administrator role, I could have done the assignment directly from in here by clicking on add assignment. And in this case, the role is already selected because I'm inside of the role menu, and I can simply see the scope that I could choose in terms of here. We spoke about this earlier as a directory, or if I'm applying it to application or service principal. So nothing changes there. The only thing is the user that I was trying to assign this to, or application or service principal, is not there. So I can simply come in here and add that person to the list. And for us, in our scenario, if we were looking at Frank, we can simply go find Frank over here and add Frank that permission. Now, again, the process, regardless of where you do it from the roles or from inside of a user, it's the same. Nothing changes. It's a choice where you can pick and choose on menu or how you want to assign that role. There is another way of me doing this. Instead of assigning this role to a single user, we can assign this to a group. As you can see already under my application administrator, I have a group called G1RA. That's a group name that I have. It tells me it's a group, and this group has a role for application administrator assigned to it. That means anyone that becomes a member of that group has that role available for them for as long as they stay a member of that group. The minute they leave that group, they lose that role that was assigned to them based on that membership of that group. So again, that's a nice way of thinking on how to implement or have a control over roles. You could make them assign them to groups rather than individual users, and as then when they move the groups, they lose all the settings that were assigned to them as part of that. Now, for me to do this, all I can do is come back in here again. We can start assigning this directly from here. Now, in my selected members, I can simply, instead of choosing a user, go into groups over here, and I can assign this to a group. So I have another group that's created that allows the role assignments to be enabled, and that's where I can now assign this. Now, in one of the previous videos, we mentioned when you're creating groups, it's a very, very important part to understand that you can only toggle that selection for role assignment either yes or no at the point of group creation. If you don't choose yes at that point, you can't change it later. If you do choose yes, you can't change it later again. So you must choose your options at that point. And if you need to change them, the only way around it is to creating a new group at that point. Now, both of these groups that I have on the screen right now, these allow role assignments to be applied to them, and I can simply go and assign that role to that group like this. Or the other way around would be to go back into my groups and find the groups that have the role assignments enabled to them, have a look at all my groups and pick up one of the groups that I have that allows the role assignments. And if I go into that, let's have a quick look. So you can see currently it has an option for assigned roles available over here. And if I click on that, this is where I should be able to assign the role onto the group just like so. In this case, the role is already, the group is already selected. All I need to do is choose a role. So again, it depends on your need, or depending on how comfortable you feel on assigning this, we can assign them from either directly from within the roles and admin, or going into a user individually or groups individually and assigning them the role that you need. Now, apart from picking up from the list of loads of different roles that are predefined, if there is a need for you to create your own roles, you can, and Microsoft allows you to do this by going into custom or new custom roles, and all you can do is click on that and start creating a new role. Now, this role could be a special app role that you are creating in your environment, and you can give a description for it as well, maybe for a particular task or project. So let's call this is for project 1, special app permissions, and we are going to assign them in here. Now, I have a couple of options over here to start creating this role. If I already have other custom roles in my environment, I can pick one of those and start creating it from there. It will help me clone them, and I can modify the changes that I need to do. So I don't have to redo this from scratch. However, if I'm just starting this for the very first time and I don't have any custom roles already available, I will have to start from scratch. And in this case, I'll go into the next tab over here and choose the permissions that I think I need to assign to this role. Again, just like when we saw the role descriptions, there's loads of different permissions available. We can do the same in here. We can go back in here and start looking at what permissions that we need. Now, as a random example, we're talking about applications. So maybe I want to go into assigning something that relates to applications. So I can filter this down to say, hey, show me all the resources to do with applications, and we'll work through that. And again, I have quite a few options over here saying maybe this person can delete the policies for the applications. Maybe they need to be able to read these policies as well, and maybe some more details that I might want to add to them as part of applications. And we'll do one more. They should be able to read all properties on the applications. Again, that's all I want to assign to them. Again, you can pick and choose many others based on your needs. As a random demo, I'm just going to be just picking those 3 for now. All I need to do is click next. Those are the set of permissions that I want to give within that role. Once I assign this role to someone, that's all what they will be able to do. And finally, I'll hit create, and that's it. This is me creating a new custom role that we've just created, and we should be able to look at this special role in here. So if I scroll this down, so we have a special role available here. This is for my project 1 special application permission role that we created already. Right, I have a similar role below that too. So I have a few special roles that I've created. Maybe I should have cloned it, but again, as a good example to look at of what you've just designed. And you can then go and assign this as we did before. And with that, we conclude this part of the session. We are going to look at discussing what are admin units and when to use them. Now for this, let me take you over to the whiteboard and explain the scenarios. Now, typically, the whole idea of using an admin unit is to ensure that you can have segregation of admin control within your environment. For example, let's assume, just for argument's sake, I have a long list of users in my tenant. Now, this is, again, me segregating completely everything that's in my Entra by users. We know that we have users, devices, groups, many other things in my Entra. Just for the explanation right now, we're picking a list of users. Now, I might have many users in my Entra environment, and these users could be part of loads of different teams, groups, and projects that they're working on. However, we have our star user called Adele, and Adele is going to look at managing some of these users that are maybe in part of a region, maybe in a particular building, maybe in a country or a city, whatever the need may be. This is where we are going to look at giving Adele a limited control over managing some of my users. Now, an easy way for me to do this would be, hey, Adele, I'm going to assign you a new role, and this role could help Adele manage these users that I have in my environment. As a role could be a user administrator role. So Adele could be a user admin and be able to assign all the settings to the users. For instance, if this user needs to be able to add, or if we want to add this user to a group, assign roles to the group, to the user, or make changes to the user profile settings. So Adele can do that. However, I don't want Adele to be able to do this as a user administrator to my entire directory and change settings for all my users. I might have only a small set of users that I want Adele to be able to manage. Maybe these users are part of my team for HR as example, or maybe they sit in a particular location in some parts of the world. Now, for this, what we can do is we can create what we refer as a container environment for our Entra and create an admin unit for this. And the admin units that we define, again, we can call it our own name. We can give it a name by the department if you like, or a project or a location or whatever suits your needs. And in here, we can start creating an admin unit called HR. Now, typically within your admin units, you're able to add users. So as from the example that we were discussing, we can simply bring these users under this admin unit. And then we can go and assign Adele the role for user administrator on to this admin unit rather than defining the scope for it to be the entire directory. Now, by doing that, Adele will be a user administrator just for those users that are within that admin unit and not for the entire directory that we have. Now, along with the users, I can also add in my admin units groups and devices for now. Now, let's jump onto the portal and have a look at how to create an admin unit. Right, I'm back into my portal, and once again I'm going into roles and admins, and under the roles and admin I can see I have an option for admin units, which is my administrative units. Currently I haven't got any, so we can start creating one over here. And this is where, as from the example previously, we can say HR team and description. This could be a description that suits you, again, your scenarios. So we can say HR team members only, and that's the description I'm coming up with, and I'm going to leave as it is. Now, it does have another option over here to say restrict management for the administrative units. So we can switch this on where other roles in my directory are no longer able to be able to interfere with the admin unit that we have created, apart from the roles that we define on it. And that's an option that you have over here to choose. Or for me in the demo now, I'll leave it as it is. Now, under the assignment roles, I don't need to do this right now. I can do this later as well. I could just create the admin unit by just giving it a name and description, and that should be good to go. However, let's assume that we are going to create this, and I am giving user administrator role, in this case to Adele, and we are going to assign that role to Adele to be able to manage that for me in this environment. And that's all I've done. And simply hitting create and review, and this confirms it for me here that this is the name for the admin unit we're creating, and the assignment that we've done is for Adele to be a user administrator. And I'll hit create. Now this will go ahead and create me a new admin unit called HR team. That's the name we came up with. And within that, if I go into the admin unit, currently I have no one that Adele is managing. This is where you start bringing in the users that you want to add to the list, simply by clicking on add members, and you can bring them in here. And I can choose which users should go into this, or I can simply come in here and add groups or devices that I want to be managed under this admin unit. And these could be all HR related resources that I might have. Or we also have some properties over here to look at. And I can define that this admin unit is going to be not assigned, but I can choose the options like we did for the groups in one of the previous sessions. Look at some of the dynamic options to assign the members of this admin unit to be automatically populated based on a dynamic query that we can come up with. So if I click on that and choose dynamic user, again, we can add a dynamic query here, and based on that query, all those users that match that criteria will fit under this particular option that I have. For now, we'll leave this out, and let's go back into my admin unit. Right, now we can create this or do this as a bulk operation. So we can look into creating a bulk add members options over here. This process requires me to upload a file to a CSV document that we need to complete. Now, this is again something that we can download directly from in here. It's an optional, it's an option that we have. By clicking on download, we can edit this file and add the right details in there, and once we have all of that ready, we can find that file and upload it back onto the portal, and once we are ready, we can hit submit, and this should help me in doing a bulk operation for adding members to my admin units. And with that, we conclude this session. In this part of the session, we are going to look at what are custom domains and how we can manage them in Entra ID. So let's jump back onto the portal. I'm back onto the Entra portal on entra.microsoft.com, and as part of the configuration in one of the earlier sessions, we mentioned that by default, when you create your tenant, you're defining your details about your company, and one of the details that you define is your primary domain. And again, as part of that setup, you are given the primary domain ending, which is .onmicrosoft.com, and you get to choose the first part of the name, given that it's not been taken by someone already. Now, that's okay for me to use these details in my organization. Something, for example, if I register contoso.onmicrosoft.com, and I can work with that. However, what if I want to bring my own domains like contoso.com or many others that I might be working with in my organization, and I don't want to use .onmicrosoft.com? Then in that case, what I would need to do is look at bringing in custom domains. Now, to do that, I am simply scrolling down to my Entra ID blade, and all I'm looking for is my domain names, and we'll go into creating my custom domains from in here. Now, one of the important parts over here to understand is that you must have purchased that domain name from somewhere. Directly in Entra, we don't have an option to purchase a domain name here. There are a couple of other places in your portals where you can go into purchasing the domain details, but not directly within Entra. So that's something that you'll have to bear in mind. So you'll have to go and either purchase them from another portal, like your admin portal would have that option available, or you can purchase this directly outside from another registrar that is selling domain names. Once you have purchased that domain name, you simply come to this part of the portal in Entra, click on custom domain and start adding your domain detail. For instance, we go with contoso.com, and for instance, I add contoso.com, assuming that I've purchased a domain name called contoso.com. All I need to do is hit add over here, and then this takes me through to the settings for contoso.com. Now, given that I have a registrar somewhere where I'm purchasing this from, that registrar will give me a small space for the domain details and settings that I'm going to be configuring for this domain that I purchased. One of the few things that I need to do is take these details, either my TXT record or the MX record, or if you want both, you can take them into your registrar and create an entry. Now, these will be your DNS entries that you're creating and different DNS records. So you'll have to copy them out and take them to your registrar and make an entry in here for your registrar under the DNS settings. So you make an entry for the text records or Microsoft Exchange records, whichever that suits your need, you can add them in there, and then you should be pretty much done with this setup. Again, the details for both are available for you to pick from in here, so you should be able to pick them up from in here and add them into your registrar's DNS settings. Now, once you've done that, you should be then able to come back into this part of the portal and click on the verify button. Now, I don't necessarily have a contoso.com registered to me, so I can't show you the settings on the contoso.com at the moment. However, if you have and you've copied this information out, you should be able to click on the verify button, which then verifies the settings from the DNS of your domain detail that you purchased, and then you should be able to use this in your environment. Now, currently, if I click on the verify button, it should come back with an error that it's not able to verify this detail, or because I haven't created a DNS records for them and it's not going anywhere. However, if I come back to my custom domain pages, I should be able to see the contoso.com available for me, but it's unverified. Given that I provide all the details to my registrar and verify this, I should then be able to use this in my settings in my environment. I can go back into creating my user accounts with contoso.com, or my existing ones. I can change the primary domain to be contoso.com as compared to the one that I have, which is already available for me to use, which ends on Microsoft.com. In this part of the session, we are going to talk about tenant-wide settings and have a look at what these configurations allow us to do. Now, one of the key things to understand around tenant-wide settings would be that these are going to be implemented throughout your entire Entra. So any changes you make as part of the tenant-wide settings, that means they're across your entire tenant, and whatever settings that you change would implement to everyone. Now, if you're looking to make changes to a particular user or a group of people or teams, in that case, you might need to look at other ways of implementing those changes. Tenant-wide settings would implement to everyone that's in your organization. Now let's jump into the portal and have a look at where we can find some of these details. I'm back onto my Entra admin portal one more time on entra.microsoft.com. One of the first things that we are doing is looking at the overview of my Entra portal, and within that I can click on the properties of my Entra environment to look at some of the basic details. Currently, the name details that I have defined within my setup, the name for my tenants that I've given, it's visible for me, the location, the region that I've assigned to my entire tenant when I created or configured my tenant in the very first place, the language details, and some details of the person that is probably the main administrator on this environment to be able to manage that. There are certain other details that we can look at under the properties, things like granting access to resources, that if we want the administrator, the global administrator in my tenant to be able to look at managing my subscriptions and resources, then we can enable that from in here. Again, it's a feature that we will probably use in one of the feature modules, talking a little bit more about Azure resources and the management for them. Along with that, we also have the options over here to look at my security default, a security feature that's available for us by default and when you start your journey into Entra and hopefully move into some more security settings like conditional access policies. And you can see some of those details on my properties tab or properties page under my Entra as well. Now, apart from that, if I go back into my users tab one more time and look into the blade for the users, I have an option over here that says user settings. Now, these are settings, again, tenant-wide for my users that I might want to configure in my environment. For instance, there are some default settings that you should be really aware of if you're looking to manage and control your environment and making it a bit more secure depending on your needs. For instance, by default, there are some settings that are assigned to user roles that can be seen over here. For instance, anyone in my environment can register an application, or any user should be able to do that by default. Now, if that's something that doesn't suit you well, maybe you can come in here and make changes to some of those settings. So it's nice to see some default settings that are in your environment, and also to be aware that you can change them for the entire tenant from within here. Now, along with that, I have some other options to look at. Things like guest users. These are typically the users that I invite, and they're external to my organization, but they're collaborating with my members that are working within my environment. Now, what kind of access do I want these users to have? We have a few options to pick from. We can go by most inclusive, where they can have same access as the member should have in my environment, or I can be most restrictive, where they only get to see what their setting is like. They're not even able to look at any of the properties for any other directory object that we have in our environment. Or we can go by the middle option, that is simply giving the users a limited access to other properties and membership of other directory objects apart from what their details are. So you get to choose what level of access you want to assign to the guest user in your environment. Now, there are a few other options we can touch on, things like administrator centers. Do I want people with no access or access to them? Do I want every user to be able to log into an admin portal and have a look at some settings? Again, we can define some changes to what they can and can't based on some other security options we have, like conditional access and other portals restrictions that we can introduce. But from here, we can completely block that access or allow that access to users. We can also look at managing LinkedIn account connections to your users that are working with your organization. So you can simply see that you can allow them to connect their school or work account to your LinkedIn profiles and verify them. So you can have that option here, or you can change that or make it for a selected group that is in your environment. Finally, in the bottom it says show keep users signed in, so you can have the option where the user stays signed into your environment. Now again, if you don't want that to happen and you want to change some of that, then you can switch that to off or say no to that feature, so your users are not continuously signed in into your environment. Now, there are some other settings that we can look at, things like external user settings, and this is something that we will talk a little bit more about in one of the next videos. This concludes our session. We encourage you to review the reference modules, check your knowledge with the additional study materials, watch other videos in this course, or search out your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.